Hello again, it's Stan Muller, senior producer at Complexly, where I make things like Crash Course and this series of Adobe Creative Cloud videos. Today, we are taking our edit that we've done in the previous 5 or 6 videos. We're taking this beautiful looking video we've made and we're going to make it beautiful sounding, which is super easy thanks to Adobe Audition. So let's get started with learning how to use Audition for dialogue. The first thing we'll do is send the project over to Audition using the Edit menu, edit in Adobe Audition, and select Sequence. And this will take the whole project and create a home for it to live in and send it on over to Audition, ideally. Here we have it. Opening files. Yep. Okay, so we've now got our whole project here in Audition. Down here we can see our video, so we can keep track of what's going on, although I find this computer is too slow for it to really sync very well. You can usually not see what's happening.
What you got? At the beginning of this particular story,
that's what it sounds like now. So this is a little embarrassing to admit, coming from a music production background, but we are not going to use a lot of plugins today, which was the hallmark of my experience of doing this for most of my career. But Adobe's new tools for sweetening dialogue are truly excellent. I've really enjoyed using them, and I'm going to show you how I use them. So what we want to make sure we've got open is the Essential Sound window, where a lot of the nuts and bolts of editing this audio kind of become transparent. So in our Essential Sound window, we select our dialogue clips. I kept all of those on channel 1 and 2 so that we can select them all at the same time and hit the dialogue button. And it's going to analyze all this stuff pretty quickly. And here we go. Okay, we've got a ton of tools here in the Essential Sound window. We've selected dialogue. I'll show you the presets here in a moment, but we can adjust the loudness, make everything appear to be the same level. We can repair, destroy noises or rumbles or hums, get rid of some S's. Clarity is basically EQing, changing the frequencies to make Mike's voice pop out among all the other stuff in the track. And creative. Let's get creative, man. Mostly just reverb, it looks like. And we're not going to mess with that because our room is already echoey enough. I find, unbelievably enough, that the balanced male voice preset, since we have a male speaking, it's a great place to start. So let's see how that sounds.
Is talking to Gilgamesh about living.
You can hear that room's a little echoey. But that's a problem with our recording, not with our mixing.
Is floods. Oh, Toe, put his swim trunks on. All right, we're all ready. Let's get.
Great. So this has put in place a bunch of stuff. It auto-matched the loudness. It has put on a de-esser. I'm going to reduce the rumble, so we take the low end out of the room a little bit, because that room that we record in is a little boomy. Check mark. Okay. In the clarity section, we've got our dynamics, which is our compressor, basically. Simple one-slider operation, natural or focused. Somewhere right in the middle really works for us. And this gets us out of learning about things like the compressor knee ratio and the attack time and the levels and the release and the gain. It does it all pretty transparently. The EQ, usually I would spend time building a nice EQ curve that by and large just had a bump here at 2K, 2000 hertz, which is where the male voice usually centers. And oh man, I'm a little conflicted about this whole thing because it's almost like a one-touch solution to EQing and cleaning up the audio. So, I mean, I gotta say, I am very pleased with how that sounds.
created the Earth, but now it's time to look at one way they destroy it.
So to zoom in and out of the timeline, I'm using the plus and minus
And
button
we've
on
spent
the
a lot of this
keyboard.
series on how various gods created the Earth, but now it's time to look at one way they destroy it. Today's topic is floods. Oh, Tope, put his swim trunks on. All right, we're all ready. Let's get started.
Okay, then we've got a very loud sound effect there on channels 4 and 5. So let's take a quick look at how to adjust the volume on the individual clips. I'm going to zoom way in here with the plus button multiple times. We've got a bathtub being filled up and crashing waves mixed. So those are too loud as they are right now, kind of blowing us out.
Get started.
So what I'm going to do is adjust the volume of each of these clips. Instead of adjusting the volume over here, which changes everything on the track, I want to change just the clip. So I highlight the clip, and if I roll over this yellow line, which is the envelope for volume, I can click on it and it will highlight, and then I can just drag it down, ideally. Yeah, there we go. So pull the volume down for that and select this clip, grab the volume envelope, and drag it down. And we should end up with a much quieter, more subtle effect. Let's bring it down even a little more, because those are loud. Okay, let's try it again.
Let's get started.
Oh, much better. And it sort of bumps in there, comes in hot, let's say. It's an abrupt entry. So what I'm going to do is fade in a little bit with these. And this is very easy to do. Select the clip we want to fade. And you can see this little gray and darker gray box here. If we grab that, we can pull in a fade. And you'll see the little yellow volume envelope again.
Get started.
Made that one a little gentler than this one too.
Let's get started.
And pulling those fades, you can now fade them in without keyframes. It's just super nice. Quick, speeds everything up. So now we're just going to listen through and make sure everything sounds acceptable to us.
The story of the flood from the Bible, featuring Noah.
Yep, sounds
and the
nice,
ark,
sounds
but
nice.
It turns out that
just to be safe, once we've added other sources here in the other tracks, I don't want it to clip. So I usually put a hard limiter on the master, and that just keeps the overall signal from clipping, even if one of these gets a little hot. And it is not the greatest sounding thing, but it does protect from any disasters. It's not ideal if we clip, but at least that'll help us out if we do. So we're going to continue to save continuously.
Cultures have flood myths. One explanation for this is the belief that myths are rooted in history. Remember euhemerism? Plus, many of the earliest complex societies grew around.
So now we're just going to
rivers
listen all the way
which
through.
would flood. Most of the time, flooding was neither predictable nor helpful.
Some of these cuts may be a little hard and may need fades. We'll add those as it goes along. We're also listening for clicks and pops that we may have to fix manually.
Myths may also reflect a
In some ways,
theme in some of the myths we've examined. The idea that creation's source is
we can keep an eye
primordial water.
out here
If water
and
can bring
see
life, it stands to reason it can also
problems
bring
as they arise by
You can see
watching the
symbols in
waveform.
various
So
purification rituals like baptisms or prenuptial
this all looks good
cleansings.
so far.
They serve as tiny reenactments of floods where an old life is destroyed.
Okay, so as we get into our
Favorite
animation,
mythical sources, the Epic of Gilgamesh.
we have another track here. We've received sound design from our animators, and we just want to make sure that that sits in the mix correctly and we can hear it, but it's not competing with Mike's dialogue.
Talking to Gilgamesh about living in the city
That
of
level
Shuruppak
sounds pretty
on the banks
good.
of the Euphrates. He explains that a
The
group
sound
of
designer is
gods,
very
Anu,
talented, so
Enlil,
there's not
Ninurta,
usually a
Enlil,
problem
and
with
Ea
that.
Put their divine heads together
but
and decided to flood the
I'll
place.
keep an eye on it,
For Utnapishtim,
and
Ea
if
has
there's
second
a
thoughts and sneaks
loud
over to
sound
spill
effect
the
or something,
beans.
we
Ea
can
secretly
just
tells
put a
Utnapishtim what's
keyframe
going
in
down
to
and
bring
orders
down
him
the
to
volume
leave
on
his
it a
home
little
and
bit.
all his possessions
But
and to build a
we should
boat
be listening
which will
and not
carry
talking.
The seed of all living things. Utnapishtim's boat is massive, an acre in circumference with 6 enormous decks. Utnapishtim and his family loaded up with everything there was, all the silver, gold, and seeds of every living thing, his kith and his kin and the wild beasts and all kinds of craftsmen, and also shuffleboard and a killer buffet, I assume. When the hour of destruction arrives, the gods send down a
So that thunder is a little loud to me, but I want to leave everything else at the level where it was. So what I'd like to do through this section where I can see it's getting a little loud, you can see the waveform kicking up a little bit there. We're going to put in some keyframes and turn the volume down, automate this a little bit. So if I click on that yellow volume envelope that we used earlier to turn the volume up and down, if I then click again, we can put a keyframe in, and then another click brings another keyframe, and we can then drag that keyframe down to reduce the volume just a hair. Let's
When
take
the
a
hour
look.
of destruction arrives, the gods send down a terrifying...
Just a little bit more, I think.
When the hour of destruction arrives, the gods
Great.
send down a terrifying storm, so terrifying that even the gods were afraid of the flood weapon. And when they see what they've done to their creation, the gods, humbled, sat there weeping. Whoops. The storm rages for 7 days before eventually blowing itself out. Utnapishtim looks out of a porthole and sees that...
So once we're out of the storm, I think we can come back up to 0. So we'll put another keyframe in, and then another, and then back up to 0, and it will sort of stick there, since
rages
that's
for
likely
7
where you want to
days
be.
before eventually blowing itself out.
Great.
Utnapishtim looks out of a porthole and sees that all of mankind has been destroyed, and he weeps.
Cool,
He's just
cool.
become the world's first
Well, not
cruise
cool
ship
that all
captain
mankind
under
has been
very
destroyed, but
unfortunate circumstances.
cool that it
His
sounds
boat
good.
comes aground, it destroys mankind,
Okay, so
but
we're
it doesn't end
through
there.
like our main
Emil, the
sound
brains
design
behind the
area.
decision to
It's
destroy humanity,
just gonna be
sees that
dialogue
Utnapishtim
from
and his
here on
family, and also probably the craftsmen, have survived, and he can't believe his eyes.
So we just have to
What
listen
sort of
carefully
life
and make sure we don't have any
survived?
problems.
No man should have lived through the destruction. Ea, who had told Utnapishtim to come down to Utnapishtim's boat,
Got a
touches
little
him on
clip there. What happened? So it looked like we
satisfies Iliel because he shrugs.
clipped just a hair. Okay, probably right there where the waveform touches the top.
A plague,
And
something,
a little noise there.
something mild.
So I'm going to do this in volume, and we will just zoom in. You can drag that keyframe around to exactly where you want it. And we'll bring that down a little, and then back up after the peak. Reset those by clicking on the red dots. And
Something mild.
yeah,
Like a
that's
plague.
fine.
Apparently this satisfies Iliel because he's childlike. Then birds are sent to find...
All right, that then hits a little hard, I think. So it's right there when at the change of clips.
Then birds are sent...
So let's put a little fade on that and just bring it in a little less abruptly. We can't really
Then birds are sent to find
move
land
stuff around
if
at
the
this
boat gets
point
stuck on a
because
mountain.
we're in
There are a number
audio,
of important
and
differences, though.
if I change
First
the
of all,
audio
the
here
reason the
and then
Babylonian
send it
gods
back to
decided
Premiere, the video will not have changed and will then be out of sync. So once you're over here in Audition, do not move any of the audio around or you will
Destroy
run into
humanity
trouble.
is...
Destroy
Well, it's
humanity.
unclear. In one version, it's because humans are making too much noise, which, okay, fair. Keep it down, you kids. Don't make me send a deluge down
So
there.
this is a pretty basic mix. We don't have a
In the Old
lot of
Testament, the
stuff.
flood is punishment for mankind's sinfulness, to do what the Babylonian gods did
Well,
in 7.
somebody
Again,
did a
those
good job of
Babylonians
recording
were
this because
working
we're
as a team. Like
not
the Sumerian myth,
running
Noah
into any
celebrates his
problems.
survival with a sacrifice. This seems to make Yahweh feel both relieved
Just kidding.
and
I recorded it.
sorry
I'm not
for
going to
destroying
toot my own
the
horn
world.
that way.
He says, I will not again curse the ground anymore for man's sake. For the
Just having
imagination
trouble
of
finding
man's heart
trouble.
is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite earth for food, along with
What I would
schools
like
for
to
how they should
find
be
are
eaten,
some
which,
ticks
that's
and
gotta be
clicks.
pretty disappointing for those animals, right?
So I
Like,
can show you how to
"Yay,
fix
we
them because
survived
it
the
is
flood,
one of
you're
my
gonna do what?"
favorite
Most important,
features
at
of
least
Audition.
For this episode is that Yahweh establishes a covenant with Noah.
We'll get there.
And promises that he will never have another flood, rising flood water.
Okay, so I've had to... Obviously, I had an edit in here, which I did an okay job with, it sounds like.
Castle, which is high enough to survive.
We can fix that a little bit. So it's just got a little bump in there, and I'm going to smooth it out with a crossfade. So what I'm going to do is get in here and select one of these clips and drag it into the previous clip just a little. And give it a second here. Might take a minute to happen because my computer does not like.
High enough to survive.
Huh. Sounded all right.
High enough to survive the rising
Not bad.
floodwaters.
Sort
The
of took
creator
care of
god,
that
Ahura
little
Mazda,
rough
decides that the
patch
Earth needs a new beginning,
by
not because of sin,
crossfading
but
the two
because it's
clips.
overwhelmed by the constant multiplication of its immortal beings. This suggests that prior to the flood, Earth's inhabitants were immortal, and it's only after this cleansing that we
Great.
have a world in which stuff dies. And like Noah, they're tasked with repopulating the world. They do that by throwing stones over their shoulders, which become more humans. And that, kids, is how babies are made. No follow-up questions. Today we learned that gods in the ancient Mediterranean
forgot
world
about that
seemed
joke.
highly ambivalent about their creations, especially humans, but especially creeping things. But also, there's...
Okay, looks like there was a little noise there. We can actually see it in the waveform if we look closely. Right
things.
about there. So let's see if we can't get rid of that. So what we'll do is double click on the clip itself, and it will load us into the file editor rather than the multi-track editor. So we'll just be looking at this single file a little more closely, and we can manipulate it in ways that we can't in the multi-track. Okay, so you can see here, we've now got our wave up above. Oh, that's our F sound. And our spectral analysis down here, so we can see all the different frequencies and where they're happening. And what's bothering me, I think, is there's a little spike right in here. So we're going to use the Band-Aid tool, the spot healing brush, and just sort of brush that spike out of there. And this thing is miraculous. It's so cool. It just takes that noise that I didn't like right out of there and cuts it out and leaves the rest of the sound the way it was. It's unbelievable. It's like magic compared to the way things used to be. So we then save this extracted wave, and if you click on the hamburger here, we'll then go back to our Premiere Project session, which ends in SESX there. And that will take us back to the multi-track view eventually. So then we save once we're back in the multi-track, just to be safe. So I think we're going to find everything from here on out sounds pretty good.
They may have influenced one another. And that seems likely given the amount of cultural transmission in the region.
Yeah.
And we also learned...
Heard a little click there, but I think it was not real.
Cultural transmission in the region. And we also learned that a good way to survive a flood is
sometimes
to be
there's a little tick in the playback that is not actually in the waveform.
Maybe the best way to survive the destruction of humanity is to...
If your eyes don't match what you're hearing,
especially when they give you detailed instructions,
I would trust my
on
eyes.
how to build a boat. Sometimes life, like a flood, is unpredictable and frightening. So it makes sense for us to look for meaning in tragedy.
As you watch these
wherever we can
waveforms flow
find it.
by,
And
you'll
one way
learn
that
to
we
see
can find meaning is to tell a story.
you'll learn to see the messes.
Change into some dry cloths. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week. Check out our Crash Course Mythology Toaster.
So I think we're ready to head this back to Premiere. You want to click on multi-track, export to Adobe Premiere Pro, and there are 3 clicks here. We want to mix down the session to a stereo file so it'll land in one of the tracks and stay there. If you think you're going to need to mix it in Premiere again later and make changes, you can export the stems, which is all the tracks, a single file for each track. We know it sounds good here. We are going to just mix down a stereo file. We're going to open it in Adobe Premiere Pro, make sure that box is checked, and then we're going to browse because we often need to We just need to make sure it lands where we want it to land. So this is the fourth version of the video. Make sure it goes in that V4. It doesn't automatically go with your project, which is a good thing to remember. And we'll click export and wait a minute while it squeezes all this stuff down into a single stereo file for us. Once that file is exported, it'll shoot us back over to Premiere, and the file will import, and then a very important question will be asked of us. Where do we want to put it? On this drop-down, you can pick one of your tracks that already exists, but to make sure I don't land on any of my pre-existing audio, I'm going to select a new audio track and click OK. So we'll have to scroll down to see it, but now we've got this whole continuous file here with all our newly mixed beautiful audio, and we want to solo that track so that our old audio doesn't play at the same time, and we've got a complete project here. Save it as usual, and you're ready to export and upload. So that's it. Thank you for sticking with me through all this stuff and learning how to make these videos. It's been fun. I hope you've enjoyed it too. Thanks for watching.